Sarah put up a quote in the back room, and the essence of it is, hospitality is how you make people feel.
Welcome to the Creative Current Podcast, a show where I talk with Grammy-nominated musicians, Michelin star chefs, and other creatives. Not the five-step playbook to success, but honest, personal conversations about what it actually feels like to live a creative life. I'm David Rust, and creativity has shown up for me in the early days of building Lyft, in playing salsa music in Cuba, and in running a hospitality business on farms. Through all of it, creating has taught me some of the most interesting things about myself. So let's go meet some incredible creators and hear what they've discovered about themselves along the way. I recently spent the day with my friends Alan and Sarah at their restaurant Sun Moon Studio in Oakland, California. Within 1 year of opening, they landed a Michelin star and a spot on the New York Times list of 50 best restaurants in the US. They come from incredible backgrounds at places like Blue Hill at Stone Barns, Benu, and Per Se. But what landed for me most in this conversation was how they approach their work, the intention they bring to it, the practices they bring to it, and how that results in something amazing. When I think about artistry and creativity in the lens of cooking and being a chef and running a restaurant, it feels really unique to me versus if someone's a writer, if someone is a painter, if someone's a sculptor, because it's so demanding, right? Like when you're on and you're serving people dinner, it's like a really full on intense experience. And so I'm sort of curious, knowing that you both are very creative, artistic people, but then there's this very real nature of the intensity of service. How do those two things show up for you? And how do you find any tension or balance between those?
I guess the intensity maybe just like how it's framed essentially. Like I think we've worked in a lot of very intense environments where we felt like the stakes were really high. And perhaps being in our own space, we can kind of dictate the environment we want to be in. And I think we kind of take from what we've experienced at those restaurants of the intensity is because we care a lot. And so we put that care into what we're doing. But also, I think being in an open kitchen, you can sense kind of some of that intensity and urgency. And so we also just focus on what we're doing in cooking versus trying to put more pressure on what we're doing. And so
Well, and
we're well practiced. We have a lot of experience, and I think when we're actually cooking, I almost feel like it's more like in sports when you're playing sports. Like you're almost in like second nature or flow state. You see you're reacting and you're doing these things and you're feeling and you're in the moment. And so I think I don't think about those things too much generally.
yeah, it's like sounds like there's not actually maybe a lot of thinking that happens. Like you've done the prep, not only the prep in terms of all the years of skills that you develop, but the prep for literally that meal. And then it's like go time and you're on the field.
Yeah, like you have the toolbox, and if you set yourself up correctly, then you're kind of playing the notes that you should be playing, and you've memorized
Yeah.
the script, but you're in the moment and trying to feel, what you're doing. Um, and oftentimes, things pop up and you go off script, and I think that improvising is kind of uh, I think music and sports is or musicians and athletes are a good analogy of you feel the moment and you use the toolbox you have and you come up with solutions. Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, we almost say it like jokingly because when you're rock climbing, you talk about this like flow state, and I don't know that I'm a good enough rock climber to have ever experienced that. I pretend that I do, but certainly in the kitchen I have. And there's this moment when it's like quite busy, and you're just so on. Like you feel like everything is like hyper alert because, especially as Alan mentioned, being in an open kitchen, we can see the guests, so you're like checking in with every table, reading where they're at, the speed at which they're eating, whether or not they're enjoying it, do they have a full water glass, but you're also like managing everything that you're cooking. And there's so much anticipation as well because you are thinking about the next step and the step beyond that. So you're setting yourself up so that their experience is seamless, but that requires a lot of pre planning on your end. I'm not sure really how that ties into creativity, but I guess the intensity that we feel is like it's an energized one. And maybe it's not the intensity of like the media of the kitchen of like maybe some negativity. To me, it's just like I kind of look forward to that part of the day because you're like, okay, it's go time. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, that piece of intensity makes sense because if you think about the intensity of a musician or the intensity of a chef is very different than the intensity of a writer, for example, and how creativity and energy, maybe there's some interesting relationship between the two. Because I know for myself, I actually feel my most creative when I'm in quite still, quiet, calm places. Like when I'm sitting with my journal and ideas are flowing and I'm like in nature and nobody's around is like one of my peak creative experiences, or if I'm playing piano by myself and no one's home. But I've also talked to people like you where you're like, oh, but I love the aliveness, or an athlete when they step on the field, or a musician when they step on stage, and that's a totally different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the creativity, I mean, like likewise, I think when you're just doing day-to-day life, ideas come to you, like when you're out in nature or you're on a walk. I think that's where, or we're like just strolling through the market, where like that intensity of um, the list of things to do for the day is kind of not there. Like, I think that's where that creative ideas can come about, or you see an ingredient that comes into the restaurant and you're like, oh, like, I think, yeah, in general, I don't feel the creativity needs to come out. It's about like how you set yourself up and what you're planning. At least in my case, it's not so much like spontaneity in the moment because, especially because our restaurant is a tasting menu and is pre-planned. I think it would be unusual if someone got a different menu like on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also in the culinary field, I mean, it is so much about prep. You know, it's like you have to prep, otherwise the thing will just not work.
Not work. Yeah, I mean, if something came into the restaurant and someone's like, "Oh, cook this for me and be creative," I was like, "Well, you have to wait like at least like several hours."
But that's on so many levels, right? Because like so much of what we do comes down to communication as well. And so like if you're just like going off and doing your own thing, you haven't communicated that to your teammates. And so they can't support you in that either. So yeah, so much of it is done ahead and pre-planned because now we're all on the same page of like what every ingredient is and how it was prepared, and then they can present it properly. Whereas if we were just kind of like doing our own thing, I mean, yeah,
Some restaurants do that,
I guess
I
so.
would say.
Yeah.
Um, but
What's a good example of that?
I mean, I think Blue Hill is a good example of that, of like this kind of creating on the fly under like strong like timing pressures. Um, but I think that's just that's a way that we just don't like operating.
And imagine the pressure gets so much higher.
Much higher. I think the unpredictability, like, can you really execute at your best when you're constantly like under constraints like that? Like where like things aren't necessarily prepared, or you're always like kind of like on one foot versus like running on two.
I think creativity comes to you a lot when we're walking with Koji or driving. Like Alan will just be like, "Oh, I've been thinking about this dish," and it's like not this fully formed idea yet, but she'll be like, "I see it having like these components, and it's like sour and salty and crunchy," and like you kind of like start throwing out adjectives, and you like kind of see it, and then you start kind of putting it together, and a lot of times you'll have all of those ingredients out and you start like mixing them in the dish until you get like the ratios that you
Yeah, I think at least my personality, it's similar to like the creative aspect is for me is similar to like I need to sit on it and think about it quite a bit. Like essentially being interviewed and like having questions that like I'm unprepared for, or having a conversation with someone for the first time, it's challenging for me to like, oh, I should have said that, or like I'm not really on the like on the fly articulator. Um,
Yeah.
I think like I think about an ingredient and then it kind of sits with me for a bit, and then like as I'm doing something else, it kind of like, oh, what about this? Like, how would I think about that? And then what preparation Like, do I think would maximize the essence of, XYZ? Yeah.
And so I imagine, do you have a whole list of things that are sort of in progress that are partially formed ideas?
Yeah, I have a notebook of like different ideas or concepts of a dish or ingredients that I'd like to work with. Um, but oftentimes it's like I'm placing orders for like the next week or the next day, and the seafood list comes up, and the vendor text messages me saying, "There's this in like that's coming available. Like, do you want to take it?" And it's usually a spur of the moment decision of like, "Okay, let's see what we can do with this."
I feel
Yeah.
like for you also, tell me if this is not accurate, but having cooked together now for many years and in different environments, I feel like it's similar to like, you know how some musicians have like certain notes in certain orders that they just seem to weave throughout their songs throughout their career, and it's not the same song, but there's something about it that feels familiar. In the same way that I think certain fashion designers have just like a signature that even though their lines from season to season are so different, there is something that you look at it and you're like, oh, that's whoever as the designer. There are certain flavor combinations now that you have different dishes and it's the first time that you've made them, but there are combinations of ingredients that really resonate with you and I think you favor. And
Hmm.
so we see those coming up over and over again of like I think of like the marinated crabs and soy sauce, right? Or like you love that fermented and smoked pasilla with seafood. And so I do think that like we see like iterations of that
Yeah.
from year to year. But just you've paired them with different ingredients or different dishes.
Yeah.
I think about there's a playlist that I have that's like the music that I love to make and I love to create. And so it's so interesting to notice that there's still a lot of variety in the songs, but there's some quality about the sound and the reverb or the type of instruments or whatever it is that really hits me. And so for both of you, I imagine there's an evolving sense of what that sweet spot is, like the type of flavor combinations, whatever it is that really resonates with you. What is that? What is that? And was that intentional or did you just sort of discover that over time?
It's generally butter.
Who doesn't love it?
You know what this needs?
More butter.
How do we identify that? I think a lot of it comes down to flavors that resonate with me because of maybe nostalgia, um, flavors that I grew up eating, and kind of melding that with like life experiences, so like places I've been or other places I've worked at, and like kind of like, oh, I really love this aspect of this charred like scallion, like, and how do I take this idea and make this my own or take it a different direction? And being inspired by like a chef that I admire, kind of thing. Um, yeah, I mean, I think we're constantly finding new ingredients of things that like that we used to use. It was like, oh, there's like a different version of this or another producer that makes this type of Shaoxing wine that's made in Taiwan, or this soy sauce that is made in a different way. So it's not what we think of as generally soy sauce, or even fermenting. And be like trying to find ingredients that, like, I think the cherry tomato or the sun gold tomato is a good example of that. You know, we had an excess amount of them and we wanted to do something with it, but we didn't. A friend of mine told me about fermenting them with sugar, and I think I was like, well, that's an interesting idea to ferment it with sugar, but how about we like balance it with some salt as well? And so now we have this fermented salt and sugar a single tomato that is like pretty awesome. And how do we take this technique and see what it can do in other like areas, from different fruit to vegetables, and like what is the result, and is it something that we'd like to further explore, or do we need to tweak a little bit more, or maybe move on and find a different application?
Yeah. Well, and that inspiration that it seems like it came from a friend, right? Like a friend mentioned to you, oh,
Oh,
ferment it with sugar.
sugar.
And it seems like, I mean, I know you've traveled a lot, you visit a lot of friends' restaurant. I also love that you
That you
post online and reshare, dishes or restaurants you've been to that really resonate with you or friends who run those restaurants. And so
and so
I just get the sense from that the community of people in your lives shape the dishes a lot.
a lot. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's like the scope of what one person cooks or like I mean, my point of view is in a lot of senses really limited. And so it's really exciting to go to other places and see other chefs and uh
Mhm.
like be excited about, you know, different flavors and unique things. Which is inspiring because then you like it's either the technique or some sort of like I don't constantly go out to eat to like just analyze, but it is like you're like, wow, like how did they do this? And you can't help but kind of like think
Mhm.
what technique was used here, or how do you break down the dish, and you know, how do they get the skin on this, fish or chicken so crispy, or what is this batter made of? Um, and you're like you're like, and then when you go back into your own kitchen, you're referencing like that was super crispy. Like, how did they do that? Um, it must be a combination of this, and then you try working on, creating something like that.
Yeah. And do you ever feel a level of competitiveness or jealousy around that in any way? Because I also am aware that you've been at, the top echelon of chefs, right? You've gotten Michelin star, you've been, at the Michelin, I don't know if it's called the Michelin Gala or the equivalents where all the best chefs in the world are there. And so when you're in those environments and you're interacting with those people and you're a part of those people, what does that actually feel like?
Like, I don't know how it feels for Sarah, but I think in general, I don't see it as competition, those kinds of recognitions. It's not like because you got it, I didn't receive something like that. Um, I see it as like, wow, like we're all part of this community and we've achieved something that like so many people like strive to achieve. And how do we kind of continue this legacy of training young cooks and up and coming chefs or collaborate with other chefs so that we can all achieve like the goals that we want to achieve.
I would say overwhelmingly that's been our experience because for me, going to these events is rather new and I wasn't sure what to expect. And the community feeling, I just didn't anticipate. And it's been amazing. Like people are so encouraging of one another. And both when we went to the Michelin events and actually also at James Beard, that was in Chicago this last summer. And there were a lot of people that I had not heard of their restaurants before, but they were just excited to tell you what they're doing, what their team has been up to, wanted to hear about what we were up to. Just sort of this feeling of like commonality of like, oh, we all do a similar thing in our respective cities, and a lot of pride for like where people are from, of just like, we're from this little town and this is our thing and this is what we do. And the support was like really, really cool. I didn't
Yeah.
as though there was a competitive nature really at all. It was more like supportive of one another, even though we didn't necessarily know each other. Um,
Yeah. I remember really valuing that when we all worked together because I had come out of the tech world and especially at Lyft, which is was so competitive. It was like Lyft and Uber.
Okay.
And a lot in tech that dynamic exists. And I remember coming into the hospitality space and feeling like what a breath of fresh air where I mean, first of all, the idea of competition doesn't make as much sense in that sense, right? Like you being successful at a restaurant doesn't detract from somebody else's, you know,
you know,
demand for their restaurant. So that helps, but it also feels like there is more of a just a community of support in that
in
space.
that space.
Yeah. I suppose in some environments in within a single restaurant, felt there's more competitive nature. That's just really not the dynamic here. I think there's so much of what we do relies on us working together as a team. Um, and again, like one person's success doesn't preclude another's on the team. Like if anything, we just all do better if we're all in sync. So perhaps this is a unique environment, but that's not really the dynamic here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, everyone has a role. Um, and it is this like striving for a common goal that we've been trying to foster, and that everyone has responsibility towards that, and we all wear all the hats. Um, and I think that competitive nature, at least within our restaurant, is we just compete against ourselves to like how do we think about incremental improvements and how do we make these things that we feel like matter to us. Um, but I think as like a restaurant chef community as a whole, like, definitely competition exists,
Yeah, of course.
and um, and I think that in some ways competition is good because it pushes everyone to like you know to do to try different things, to be you know to up their game or create new benchmarks for themselves. And in turn, it fuels this like all high tides rise all ships kind of thing. I think that's how it goes.
Something like that.
Something like that. Something about boats and like the tide going up and all the boats.
Yes. Well, and a concept that I love exploring in myself and with people that I'm talking to around creativity is that at some point you can kind of take a perspective that what you're building or what you're creating is ultimately yourself, right? Like you're serving a dish, you're serving a meal, but to do that, there's all this stuff that you're moving through as an individual, right?
Right.
You're realizing things you're excited about. You're realizing blocks. You're realizing things you're nostalgic about, flavors that you're reconnecting with. Um, and so I'm curious, what are you learning about yourselves right now through what you're creating?
I think for me, I think I keep thinking about how like when you're on social media, you see the way that other chefs and restaurants are preparing food and plating food, and this like ambition that they're exuding as far as like clearly they're going for a certain aesthetic and a certain amount of labor and technique to create a dish. And I think I find myself kind of like thinking about like, oh, I could do this, I can make things more complex, I can just almost for the sake of it, of like trying to meet guest expectations of like they want to see something that is more elegant on the plate, or they want to see more uh, complexity or different plateware or something that's more refined. And I think I always catch myself as we're going through these like creating new dishes of like, wait, what is this really about? This is about highlighting uh, the product that's coming in this restaurant and presenting it as simply as possible. And the technique that you are using should be, I don't want it to feel laborious,
Mhm.
where I guess feel like, oh my gosh, like can't believe what they did to this thing.
Totally.
um, I want to represent, the food that we are serving as naturally as possible. And I think a salmon is a really good example of that. Like salmon is something that wild king salmon from California is something I haven't cooked in years because it just wasn't available. And so now like we could cut it into unusual shapes just because it's really beautiful and like get the perfect triangle or but I I think what it is already really beautiful. And so how do we exemplify that? We try to make the skin as crispy as possible, and you try to cook it so that it's just flaky, but not overcooked. Um, and sure, there's a lot of technique in that process, but we also try to like streamline it for efficiency. Like we just use one pan, and it's not this, some restaurants will do a lot more to achieve those techniques or these outcomes. And I think we're just proud of the simplicity of representing like this is what salmon is, and it's so special for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get that. It seems like one of the things you're learning is especially how social media will just constantly feed us things that we think that make us think, oh, we should do that different or better. And there can be a world where that's inspiring. But what I'm hearing is that you have such a clear vision for what you're expressing through the restaurant. And you come back to that and say, oh, is what we're doing in alignment with that? Or did I just get distracted by something that came in?
Yeah, I think that's a constant um, reference point. I think, especially on the early dishes on our menu, sometimes I kind of like, well, but then there's this. Like, I think the abundance of what's available here really is the hard part. Whereas if we had more constraints about what was available, I think the dish would probably be even more simple. But I think we're just also very excited about um, everything that's at the markets and what people are growing and try to represent as many of these producers as possible.
Yeah. And Sarah, how about you? What are you sort of learning about yourself at this point in the restaurant?
Yeah. I mean, I would echo some of that from Alan. You know, the pictures you see or when we go out to eat of desserts these days, I feel like are super intricate. There's a lot of components, a lot of cool techniques out there. And part of it is like my limited toolbox, if you will, for some of those things, like being more of a baker than a pastry chef. But part of it is also like limited time. And, there's three of us in the kitchen now. And so we have to be really selective about like what things make it to the plate at the end of the day. And is it really enhancing how the dish eats and the guest experience? And so, um, really it's usually Alan being like, that's enough, like don't put anything else on the plate, and like reminding me that that's sufficient. And so I think my aesthetic, um I'm still sort of figuring that out. I think that's probably a lifelong thing that you do in the kitchen, is like you're continually figuring out
And it's not set.
it. Yeah, for sure, it's dynamic, but honing that in. But I think we're in a unique position as well, because we're not just operating as chefs, but now I guess restaurateurs. And so I think a lot of our conversation is around the hospitality aspect as well, of just like what feeling we want in the dining room and how do we achieve that, and how do we create an experience that's unique to Sun Moon, so that when people come in here, like really we just want them to feel taken care of. We want them to feel nourished and safe, and that they have this little moment to do whatever it is that they anticipated doing. Like some folks are here for a celebration, some are here for a date night. We've frankly had people come in because they're mourning a loss and wanted to just have a significant evening around that. And so, so much of what we do now is just talk about like what are some little touches that we can have while people are in this space that really makes them feel welcome and heard. And then because there are only four tables, you're evaluating that every night, twice a night, of approaching a table and kind of trying to determine what is it that they want out of the experience, and to what degree can we customize that. And some people, you approach them and it's very clear that they are one on one, they have an intense conversation, or they're just enjoying each other's company, and the food is sort of like secondary to that. Whereas other guests, are maybe hyper foodies and they've traveled and eaten broadly, and they want to know more about each ingredient or the thought process behind the dish. Um, we had a couple in last week, and honestly, they just wanted to tell us about their new dog and ask us about our experience training a new dog. And the food, they were excited about it, but like that was very much secondary to just sort of the social aspect. And so I think we're learning more, just sort of about that dynamic, and then balancing that with um, cooking and making food.
Yeah. My God, there's so many sparks going off around what you're saying, because what I'm hearing is there's a theme of simplicity, not overdoing it. And that's both in terms of the dish, but also the space, the physical space. And when you're crafting an environment, what I'm hearing is you're really tuning into the individuals. And you can do that very well there because there's a small number of tables.
Yeah.
But when I think of simplicity, it's like, oh, when I'm impacted by a restaurant, it's mostly all starts with the people. Like just how someone is at the table.
Yeah.
And do they actually listen and care and share information? And like the whole space could look horrible but that experience could be really beautiful, and I would still remember that.
I think about when y'all got when we were working at Sagra and you guys went and got mole. Do you remember? Yeah. I was,
Yeah.
but you all came back and you were just like, okay, it was delicious, but the people were so kind to us. And so,
Hmm.
and as a chef, you have to remove your ego a bit because as much as you'd like to think that people are just there for the food, that's in my experience just not necessarily always true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah put up a quote in the back room, and it's the essence of it is, hospitality is how you make people feel. And that's really where like the job of a restaurant or a chef really ends up being. It's like how do you make people
But
feel? Yeah.
but you do have to check the ego to allow that to happen, because I can imagine, especially at your talent levels, of course you're like, I want to wow them with this dish, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, how can I make them feel how they want to feel today and actually know how they want to feel?
And that's where we rely a lot on our team because they
Yeah.
are one, great communicators, and two, just so emotionally intelligent. And so it's really incredible for us to like, especially when it does get quite busy, we can focus on the cooking and know that they're going to do exactly that. And we just have like so much confidence in their ability to do that. Um, but actually, dietaries is a place where I think we are starting to distinguish ourselves in that way because we're just noticing more and more people have limits on what they can or would like to eat. And I think, I don't know if you've noticed as a diner, but it does seem that there's a trend in fine dining to just say, you know what, this is the food that I, as a chef, want to make. This is my cuisine. And if you can't eat certain elements of it, then maybe this isn't for you. And I think we're always balancing that tension with, yeah, I mean, there, you intended a dish to have certain components to get to a final result, but does that start to exclude more and more people who maybe can't have garlic or dairy or meat? And so right now, our policy has been to make an effort to accommodate virtually every dietary restriction. And so that does mean that even though, we only do 24 covers, say in a night, there are nights where we're running 8 or 9 different menus to accommodate individual restrictions. And again, I think that does require a certain amount of removing yourself and what you want from the equation and saying, how can I make this person feel welcome and that they can participate with their friends or their family despite having some restrictions? And in turn, it's caused us to, I think, be kind of creative because it's like, okay, how do I get my point of view across as a chef and deliver the types of cuisine and dishes that we aim to deliver with these parameters? That's kind of challenging.
Yeah, I guess in that sense, our perspective on cuisine really is representing the products. And so we ourselves aren't necessarily the product. And I think that in some ways it's probably easier to remove ourselves from that idea.
Yeah.
It's like, this is about me and my story and my life represented on a plate, but more, this is like representing the work of these farmers that grew this ingredient or raised this animal.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that's the message that is sort of coming through in what you're doing is the pure essence of the ingredients, the story of them, and doing what you can to showcase them in the best possible way without overdoing it. Yeah.
Progress still, just now in Oakland.
I mean, there's something beautiful about simplicity.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still honestly have dreams about the food that you all made there. And Catherine,
Though at the ranch, I think I overcomplicated it a little bit.
Do you?
Yeah,
yeah,
at times.
how so?
We did a lot in a small space on a, on a offsite thing that wasn't quite full kitchen, and we kind of just
Yeah, nowhere near full kitchen. Yeah.
like we kind of just made some things happen, but it was, I mean, I think those constraints made it really fun and exciting. kind
But
of.
I think
I
my
think my
favorite
favorite
bite,
bite,
which
which
is
is
I think
I think
very
very
simple,
simple,
was
was
that
that
sort
sort
of
of
what you
what you
took out of
took
the
out of the
pasture,
pasture.
and it was that little like edible bouquet, which I think was just drizzled with a little olive oil and like sea salt, and you basically were eating what the cows ate.
Yeah,
But there was so much flavor in that because who normally eats that combination of greens?
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they had really good pasture out there. It's easy.
I mean, that's what they specialize in.
Then
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
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 And so, with that message, when you're thinking out into the future and thinking about how to allow that message to continue to express itself and grow, what does that look like for you? Whether it's at your restaurant now, keeping it as it is, expanding it, to the extent you can share that.
That
Yeah, I think like we talk about expansion or growing or creating another location, like it's on our minds as far as like oh, you know what does that look like? And I think it's important to think of like, well, we essentially would like to do it because right now it's only just three of us in the kitchen and two in the in the dining room, and essentially like we talk about sharing and passing down experience and creating opportunities for people to learn, to grow, to gain experience and move on to other places or start their own businesses. And I think right now it really is limited to the people in the room, and basically 50% of them are us. Um, and so like the opportunities to do those things are super limited. Um, and so I think we would like to expand so that um, that can happen. And I think we've positioned our cuisine as the product being the product and just being seen through the lens of our personal experiences. And I think when more chefs comes through, they can add their personal experiences to this story, and it doesn't overshadow like the overall narrative of the restaurant or the food.
Excuse me.
It's just adding more color to it and more depth. So I think we just keep that as like just finding the right opportunity um, and the right time to expand or to grow um, is essentially why this space has received the recognition it has. Is because we were given the right opportunity. A landlord took a chance on us when I found this space on Craigslist and kind of gave us all the support and opportunities to make this happen, even though we had very few resources. Um, so yeah, I think we're in no rush in that sense.
Yeah. No rush, but I'm also hearing that there's a desire to be able to share it not only with more people who are dining, but also from the team side to be able to have more chefs in who are sharing their perspective on dishes, who are having that experience, who can move through and move on to other things. Yeah.
I think that's such a huge part of the industry. We were on the benefiting side of that, of just being invested in, if you will, by our mentors. And so I think we just want to perpetuate that. And I think to go back to the music analogy, I mean, you've been in bands, so you know firsthand, like every time you have a different combination of people playing music together, they're all bringing something different. And the music that comes from that benefits from their experience and their personality and point of view. And I think we feel similarly about the cuisine. And even adding Nick to the team about 5 months ago, he's a career chef and he's worked at some great spots, and so it's so instructive to have him be in the space and be like, oh, why do you do it this way, or I have this idea, or I've done it this way elsewhere, and to sort of take that into consideration and add that into the conversation has been like kind of energizing for us. And so I think we think if there was an opportunity to expand in the future, there would just be more of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but already, but what you've built, as you named, has formed this foundation that now you can look at growth, not just for the sake of growth, but because you want to keep expressing something that you've already formed.
think that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, yeah, I would love to. I don't love how the space is so small that it's a competition to get in. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be great for more people to come in and to celebrate special occasions and not like feel like they have to go through a tremendous effort to do that.
Yeah. But I mean, also hearing this theme around constraints and how constraints have been so helpful for you are because you've embraced them, including the size of the space.
Yeah.
But I have friends constantly saying, "Oh my God, I wish I could get in there." And I get that you wish more people could come in, but there's also a benefit. I mean, there's so many examples in the world of where something being a bit more scarce has a lot of power.
100%. I mean, that was never intentional. That wasn't by design. It's certainly where we're at right now. And I think one thing that we've been really grateful for is I'm always anxious that people are basically going to be mad at us for that. And to a T, guests come in and they're like, good for you, or we're happy for you that that's the case. And also now we just feel extra special that we're here and like we won the lottery. And the way that, at least in person, people have been positive about that, of like, yeah, I just like I figured it out and now I'm here and it worked and I'm glad for it. And it could go the other direction. I'm aware of that. But in general, folks have just been like very supportive and excited when they are able to come in. But we are trying to streamline it so that that process is as straightforward and transparent as possible. Like, this is the release time, this is how you get a table, but at the end of the day, when there are only four of them, it's a bit challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But, congrats again on the success that you've found. And I'm so glad we got this time to reconnect and explore this because it's been such a treat to get to know both of you before this was ever created and to see the journey that it took to get where you are, which was not guaranteed by any means.
No.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, nothing's guaranteed. I mean, I didn't expect the place to get the recognition or, when we first opened, no one came.
Yeah.
We had to invite our friends to fill the dining room to make it seem more popular.
But I think also to like send some flowers your way, David. Like, you're one of the first people who like trusted us with the vision and gave us sort of like free reign. And we're like, you do what you do. And that was pretty early on. And
Yeah, that was our first venture on our own.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome. And it makes me so excited to think about how you get to share that with other people. Because I'm hearing how deeply that is embedded in what you're doing. Is like you want to be able to mentor other people, be a platform for other people, not where you're saying you have to stay with us forever, but like be here, be a part of this. And when it's right to leave, like that's also beautiful.
I'm like, you should stay with us for a long time. But then
Yes. Yeah. You're like, please stay for a while.
like, great.
Yeah. But I so appreciate reconnecting with you guys today.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's great to chat with you, David.